Perhaps the biggest question that's been going around the gaming industry, especially this year, is are console exclusives good? If you're making this big AAA $100 million project for the PlayStation or the Xbox, or Nintendo making something like Zelda that probably costs them a fortune, does that actually help the gamers? Or does it just help big gaming companies? Well, what's interesting is today, the head of Xbox Gaming over at Microsoft, Phil Spencer, just said that he believes that all console exclusives are going to eventually go extinct. And I want to just look at his exact wording of it because this seems to have stirred up a little bit of debate. And honestly, I do find this entire idea very, very interesting. What's up, gamers? Dreamcastguy here. Hi, hope you're having a great day. If you could like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. So where this all came from is this very long and very in-depth interview that was done with Bloomberg just today. It just came out here about an hour ago, and honestly, I've been poring over it. Essentially what it's about, the primary crux of this, is that Phil Spencer is talking about how difficult this entire Activision Blizzard has been, this entire deal, because honestly, nobody's ever bought a $70 billion acquisition before. I mean, they don't know how this is going to pan out. But towards the end of it, he starts to talk more about the idea of Call of Duty, the impact of console exclusives, and certain other ideas that I think are not really discussed by big companies very often. Now, I want to minimize this and actually show these exact excerpts. Phil Spencer, who pledged to make Call of Duty available for rival Sony PlayStation consoles, at least for some period of time, said the idea of making games exclusively for one device is something we're just going to see less and less of. But now he goes on here a bit. This is the part that really struck me personally. Maybe you happen to be in your household and you buy an Xbox and I buy a PlayStation and our kids want to play together and they can't because we bought the wrong piece of plastic to plug into your television, he said. We really love to be able to bring more players in to reduce friction, making people feel safe and secure when they're playing, allowing them to find their friends, play with their friends regardless of what device. I think that in the long run, that is good for this industry. And maybe in the short run, there's some people and some companies that don't want to love it, but I think that we're going to get over that hump and we're going to see this industry continue to grow, and it proves to be true. Now, he's trying to talk in very politically correct, safe business speak. Obviously, he is a very, very important, very highly paid marketing executive. He's a guy who has to make sure that branding is tight, games are selling, Game Pass numbers are always going up. But I think it's pretty clear that if you read between the lines here, he's essentially saying that he wants to make sure that every Xbox game can sell and play with games on Nintendo Switch. Every PlayStation game can be compatible and playable on Xbox or PlayStation. And I think he has an interesting motivation behind this, but I think a lot of people are sort of focusing on this idea that he kept saying that console exclusives are fading. We've been seeing this for some time. So this is Matt Pescatella. He's a very famous games analyst, and he's been talking about the fact that locking content to one piece of hardware just won't make financial sense in the future. And yes, even some manufacturers that remain focused on one device exclusively today will eventually shift. Now, there's two separate directions this can go. I do think that part of this is about Microsoft's very intelligent push towards PC. Obviously, there's Windows computers all over the place. Microsoft is still predominantly a software maker. They make hundreds of billions of dollars just selling computers with Windows on it, making all sorts of proprietary platforms. But with this, they've now managed to push their way very successfully into the gaming industry. Like Xbox, Xbox 360, the One, and now the Series X, they've all managed to be pretty big hits. But I think that they realize that if they want to try and sell 100 million copies of Gears 6 someday, doing that requires being everywhere. It requires people to be able to go and buy it and spend money wherever they want. But part of this I do think comes down to the fact that this whole idea of reducing friction, that's something that he said specifically, is he wants the idea of people to play. I think some people are thinking of this a little bit too literally. Some people seem to think that maybe he's just signaling that he wants cross-play for every single game, but I don't think that's what it is. I truly believe that right now, Microsoft, PlayStation, and Nintendo, they get money no matter what you buy from their storefront. Sony's actually talked about the fact that they make billions a year from people buying Call of Duty or Fortnite skin microtransactions from their storefront, because 30% of every dollar spent on the PlayStation Store, 30 cents of that goes to PlayStation instantly. So I think the idea of Microsoft and Sony sort of becoming more buddy-buddy, more allowing the idea of letting their games exist, at least in some format, on other platforms, to me, I guess that doesn't sound completely outlandish, but first and foremost, I think we're going to probably start to see the push from Sony specifically towards day-and-date computer releases. Whenever a game like Halo Infinite comes out, it's instantly released on both PC and obviously the Xbox simultaneously, and I do think that Sony is starting to see the value of that, of like, okay, we do want you to buy a PlayStation. Sony is definitely way more focused on PlayStation sales than Xbox is on Xbox sales. But even with the rising success of the PlayStation, I think that Sony is starting to see that that's not quite enough. As much as people are still lining up to get the PS5, and a lot of gamers are still out there trying to pre-order every single gadget they can that's even PlayStation related, I do think that Sony is beginning to eye that big Xbox pie. I do think that as it currently exists, Microsoft has a much stronger grip on Steam sales, on just PC sales in general. Like, a lot of people are able to buy games easier, faster, quicker, and play them easier using stuff like PC Game Pass. So I think that Sony is probably starting to eyeball that and get a little bit jealous. There's even been talks that inside the code of stuff like Marvel Spider-Man, there's actually a bunch of text that says that they're making some sort of Sony launcher. And I think that there is a tiny jump between making your games available on PC and then jumping straight into making your games available on other platforms. Now, something I've seen people kicking around, which I don't personally agree with, is the idea that Microsoft is going to go full third-party publisher as soon as possible. I think they're going the Embracer Group route, says Persona Speaks right here. Buy as many of the studios they can and then make everyone pull in all the money. Now, I don't think that would be a bad business strategy, but it still just seems like a little bit of a leap in logic that I can't quite make yet. I do think that Microsoft wants to sell their games in other places. I think Sony wants to put their stuff in other places, but I think it's going to begin first and foremost with their free-to-play projects. Sony has sort of been signaling the idea that they're going to be doing more games as a service stuff. That's part of why they bought Bungie, apparently, is because they want to be able to have, obviously, games as a service stuff like that Last of Us multiplayer or any major new expansions that Destiny may come out with. That's obviously all going to be third-party or multi-platform, I mean. I believe that this is what both Sony and Microsoft really want to do, which is basically saying, okay, what if we start out just making our content that's not an upfront cost? What if we get the games that don't cost $70 on day one? What if we take the free-to-play stuff and sprinkle it around to sort of give people a taste of PlayStation? Or in the case of Xbox, okay, what if we start to experiment with putting just the Master Chief Collection onto Nintendo Switch, or the Master Chief Collection, an older Master Chief game, onto the PlayStation, just so we get that extra attention, that extra sales, that extra microtransactions that could really be beneficial to us in the long run beyond just our massive PC and Game Pass sales. Now, the biggest thing that makes me not able to believe this yet is just looking at sales charts. So this is Zubitech. Zubitech's been tweeting a lot about the fact that what's kind of bizarre is that even though 2022 has sort of been a quiet year for video games, according to a lot of gamers, this is the August 20th sales charts for 2022, so it's just a singular week over in the UK, but I think it paints an interesting picture as to the power of console exclusives. These are the top 10 selling games in the United Kingdom right now. Horizon Forbidden West, a PS5 and PS4 exclusive. Nintendo Switch Sports, a Switch exclusive. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, a Switch exclusive. Pokemon Legends Arceus, an exclusive. Legend of Skywalker Saga, that's third party, that's multi-platform. And then right here, Gran Turismo 7, another console exclusive. GTA 5, That's third party. Minecraft is third party. FIFA is third party. But Animal Crossing, again, is a Nintendo Switch exclusive. The fact that over half of this chart is actually games that only exist on a particular console, to me, I do feel like this signals the strength as it currently stands of console exclusives. Because console exclusives, I feel like people forget this. It actually does a lot for the publisher, for the developer. Like, think about this. A lot of console exclusives help sell the system itself. They make the development cost lower because a lot of times you're only having to make it for your specific hardware instead of trying to put it on every single variation of PS4 Pro versus PS5 versus Xbox One versus One X versus Series X. So that makes your development costs a lot cheaper. The profit is higher because you're selling it to yourself, so which means you get 100% of the sales profit instead of just the 30% of selling it on another platform. I do think that as it stands, console exclusives are going to exist for many, many years to come. Maybe I'm going to eat crow, but I just cannot imagine stuff like God of War Ragnarok appearing on the Xbox, at least not anytime soon. I do hope that some of these people start to blur the lines a little bit. Personally, I would love to see, I'm loving a lot of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, but I do think this game at times has sometimes some rather rough visuals, a little bit of blurriness. I do kind of wish I could play that game in some sort of capacity on my PlayStation 5 to see the full power of Monolith Soft. I do hope that someday we start to see these companies put particular projects onto rival platforms just to see what sticks. I'm curious when the blurring begins. But what do you think about this? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big old thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all, and keep dreaming. I feel like my voice is a little bit soft today. Sorry, I've been not sleeping my best. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.